All right, I'm so sorry. For those technical difficulties, we had a recording error, but I hope everyone can hear me. I wanted to go over a few housekeeping issues. If everyone can just make sure we put our phone on mute since we are recording this, we want to provide it the best listening ability for all of our future attendees. We also will we'll try to make sure we cover everyone's questions, but the best way we see to do this is if you can type in the comment box over to the left. If our speakers will see those and it's relevant to something they can quickly answer, we will answer those in order. If not, I'll take a note of what those questions are and make sure at the very end we will get all your questions answered. We have with us today a series of really wonderful speakers. We have Amanda Gale. She's a professor at UNCG. We have Sydney Kirshen, Taylor Ghost, Garrett Wilson, and I'm Lee Stevenson, the professional development leader for IIDA, and I help coordinate educational opportunities for the NCIDQ for our Carolinas chapter. We've gathered these four wonderful contributors, and we would like for them to go ahead and introduce themselves, starting with Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Gale. Like Lee said, I'm a professor with the Interior Architecture Department at UNCG. And I took the NCIDQ back in 2006. But currently, I am acting as an NCIDQ ambassador. So today, I'm going to talk to you a little about the format of the NCIDQ exam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sydney Kirshen. I am a member of the IIDA. I'm the Coastal City Center Director, and I recently passed all portions of the NCIDQ last year. I took the IDFX in the spring and the Practicum and the IDPX in the fall. I was also a member of the IIDA-hosted Q Prep class, so that was super helpful, and we'll talk about that more later.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Ghost. I'm a designer with CJMW Architecture. I recently took the IDFX and passed, and am studying right now for IDPX this fall.
Hi, everyone. I'm Garrett Wilson. I am the Western North Carolina City Center Director for the Carolinas chapter. I recently passed the NCIDQ. I took Foundations, Professional Practice, and the Practicum all at one time, and I passed it this past April. And I was also in the Q Prep class for the Carolinas chapter with Sydney.
All right, well, thank you very much. Let's see.
Okay, this is Amanda again. So I'm just going to briefly describe the three exams, or the three parts, the three sections of the NCIDQ exam, and specifically who they're targeting. So there's two multiple choice exams. The first multiple choice exam is fundamentals, which is frequently referred to as the FX section. This is multiple choice. It's taken on a computer, and there's 100 questions, and you have 3 hours to take this exam. This exam is targeting or designed for graduating seniors or recent graduates. And what I mean by that is it tends to focus more on book learning, so information that's covered in a book or something you would pick up in an academic environment. And you don't have to have 2 years of experience before you can take this section. The other two sections, the professional, which is also called PX, and the practicum, that you have to have years of experience working in the field, or, you know, roughly 3,500 hours. The PX is it's more 150 hours. The last section is and this has changed quite a bit, and I will talk about that more in the next couple slides. But it's also computer-based now. There are 120 questions, and you have 4 hours to take the exam. And you're no longer drawing, you're dragging and dropping components, which I'll talk about more in a little bit later. So this next slide is talking about passing rates, and this is for 2016. I know people get a little bit nervous when they take the exam because it's a big investment of your time, your energy, and financially as well. And so people like to know what the passing rates are. So this is from 2016, and you can see that it is passable. To be preparing for this. The FX portion. Can you change the slide for me? Perfect. Okay, with the portion, again, this is geared towards people that you can take, but you don't have to have those 2 years of experience. So individuals are given 3 hours to take this exam, and there's 100 graded questions, but there are non-graded questions as well that are being pre-tested. But here's the breakdown. You can see that the largest chunk, 20%, is construction, drawing, and specification. So that means you would have to spit out with construction, drawing, and specification. And so 25 items are ungraded.
Amanda, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it seems like people are having trouble hearing you. I think you're breaking up or there's some background noise or something.
I can move closer to a window. Is it better now?
It seems a little better. It's kind of intermittent the way that it breaks up. If anybody has their microphone on, if you're not talking, if you're not Amanda, if you could mute it, that might help.
Should I repeat anything or just keep going?
Maybe if anybody wants something repeated, say so in the comments in the conversation, but otherwise I'd say just keep going.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, the next exam is the professional, so the PX. This is also multiple choice and also taken on the computer, and this has 150 graded questions. With this section as well, there's also 25 ungraded questions, and this is just pre-testing questions. So it's always good to keep that in mind in case you are taking the test and you are really frustrated by the questions. Some of those might just be these pre-tested questions. And here you can see the largest content is contract administration and codes and standards. So the last of the exam is the practicum, and this is changing a little bit. It's turning to computer-based, but the breakdown of the content is going to stay the same. So it's still covering contract documents, codes and standards, programming, and then building systems and integration. It's just the format of the questions will be different. So starting in the fall, you'll have 4 hours to take this exam, and 40% largest contract documents. So things to consider are you might be plan. You'll definitely see furniture plans. There may be some eligibility details that you're looking at. So it will be asking you questions about the documents that you would see. So this is the blueprint for kind of what you can see within that. And again, 4 hours to complete this, and this will be computer-based. So having it be computer-based means that they're no longer going to be testing you on time management, which was one of the big challenges with the previous hands-on exam. So this fall, it's all going to be computerized. You can take the exam at a Prometric testing site, and no hand drawing. There's not a computer program that you need to learn because the format for the questions will be hotspots, fill in the blank, multiple choice, or drag and drop questions, meaning that you will see on your screen a question and you'll be able to access multiple drawings that you can look at, and then it may ask you to highlight something, which would be a hotspot, or it may ask you to place a piece of furniture or a piece of equipment, which would be dragging and dropping. So you would literally just kind of be clicking your mouse and pulling something over into the drawing that you would be looking at. I do want to encourage you, if you're thinking about taking the Practicum 2.0 exam, to go to the website that's on the screen. CIDQ has a ton of information to help alleviate some anxiety that may exist about taking this new format of the exam. They have a short YouTube video that shows types of questions, and then for purchase there are, I believe it's 12 questions that you can access and see. It is a combination of commercial and residential, so you'll be given case studies to look at. Then I just want to make sure that you are aware of some upcoming dates. So if you're planning on taking the exam, application period has already passed for that. The registration period is open, and it's open until September 30th. So make sure that you actually register for the exam time and day. And the exams will be administered at Prometric sites starting October 1st until October 31st. So it's up to you when you take the exam within that time period. You could take them at the beginning, you could take multiple choice, you could take the second multiple choice in the middle, and you could end the month with the Practicum exam. So there's no set time that you must take them like there was before. Previously with the Practicum, there was only one weekend that it was offered. Now you have the whole month to look at when you're trying to figure out which days you want to take the exam. And then for the spring, the dates for the spring are November 15th is when the application will open. It will close January 15th, and then you've got a registration period that happens after that. And the exam dates for the spring are April 1st through the 30th. And there are very detailed eligibility requirements posted on the CIDQ website. There's also exam fees that are posted on the NCIDQ website. So I urge I got muted for 1 second. I would urge you to look at the NCIDQ website to get more information about the exam cost. And then the very last thing that I would like to talk about with you guys is a sample score report. Perfect, thanks. So once you take the exam, you will be given some feedback besides just whether you passed or not. So it does take 6 to 8 weeks to get your results, and that's true for all of the sections of the exam. So with the sample scorecard, you would receive this kind of report back on any of the sections you took. So that's the PX, the FX, and the Practicum 2.0. So it will tell you each section within that, how you did. So if for some reason you do not pass, it will tell you, it should give you a big hint as to what you should be studying for more next time. And that's all I have for my sections.
All right, thank you so much, Amanda. We're going to go to the study materials and tips and tricks component. Taylor or Sydney or Garrett? I muted them. It doesn't.
Sorry, guys, I had to hit that *6. The
Can you hear me now?
ID reference manual.
Yes.
Okay. So are Garrett and Taylor, just before we start this, are you all unmuted?
I'm unmuted now, Sydney.
Okay, cool. So just to start on our study materials page, if you buy one book, this is the book to buy. I'm sure you've probably all heard of it if you're studying for any portion of the NCIDQ, but this is kind of the NCIDQ Bible, the Interior Design Reference Manual by Kent Ballast. It's got everything broken down by section and everything you're going to need to know. And so all of the other books that we're going to talk about subsequently are a good filler. They're good in addition to this book, but if you buy one, we all recommend this one, and we've all used this one to study.
This book's really good.
This is Taylor. This is the only book that I've been studying from primarily.
Whenever I study for mine, I use the same book. What's great about it is it also breaks down each of the individual chapters into each individual section that's covered on the PF, the PX, the FX, and the PRAC. And so if you're finding you're having to study for one section in particular more, it's great because you can really dial in onto what sections of the book you need to read and which ones you need to study.
And the title of the book is the Interior Design Reference Manual. We had a question pop up by Kent Ballast. And we can probably go ahead and move on to the next slide, Lee. Thanks. So some additional study materials moving forward. The second thing that I used to practice and study for the test was Q Practice, which is an online resource. They have study modules if you want to go by that. They give you a schedule of what to study and when to study based on when you would sit for the exam. But what I mostly used it for was the practice quizzes and practice tests. They have timed versions, non-timed versions. They switch the questions in and out, and they give you the answers at the end, and they tell you if you passed or failed. So I found that extremely helpful. And then the next one, Problem Seeking, is another book that is referenced also in the Ballast. And some of you may have this book from design school. I know I had the version on the right from when I was in school. They've updated it since then, but if you're just looking to study for the NCIDQ and maybe not reference this book ever again, you can definitely save money by buying an older edition on Amazon or something, or from a used textbook store, and save your money there, because honestly there aren't too many changes from edition to edition in textbooks. This one is more code related, this slide. So in the IDPX, in the practicum, you're going to have to know ADA codes and clearances and, you know, all of that stuff that you pick up in practice in your 2 years before you have to sit for the exam. But the full manual that some of y'all, if you're working at a design firm, might have lying around is the Accessible and Usable Buildings and Facilities. It's actually published by the International Code Council, and it's the Bible on all accessibility requirements. Some of those are tested on the NCIDQ, some of them aren't, but it's got all of the correct information in that book. And then the one following, this Kitchen and Bathroom Planning Guidelines, I found is kind of a tiny pared down version of Accessible and Usable Buildings. It's like $12 on Amazon, so it's definitely worth having. I still use it today in the office, and it's got some good visuals to it. It shows you how the kitchens and bathrooms could be laid out, what your clearances should be. So it's geared towards the residential code, and that's kind of the main difference, is that that's geared towards residential, and the one that's published by the ICC is for commercial and residential. And this next slide is, again, more supplemental. The Codes Guidebook for Interiors definitely gives some explanation to the codes that you have to learn and why you have to learn them. I ended up with one of those on my bookshelf, again, from my design school days, so always good to have on hand. Interior Construction and Detailing is a good book, another one by Ballast, that can help you in some of the nitty-gritty if you're having trouble with learning how things go together.
I'd like to add on the Codes Guidebook for Interiors. I found it really helpful to kind of cross-reference the Ballast books with the Codes Guidebook for Interiors. One, it kind of helped, you know, me remember the codes that were going to be on the exam and help me study more, but then I would also tab them for later in my professional career in case I need to flip back really quickly. I have it bookmarked, ready to go. For the Interior Construction and Detailing book, I use that with my the Interior Design Reference Manual, but I kind of found that it duplicated a lot of the information. So I would consider the Interior Construction and Detailing a little bit lower on the list of books that I thought were extremely helpful when studying, just because the Interior Design Reference Manual had everything I needed in it to pass the exam.
Lee, we can probably go to the next slide. So this one, again, as Garrett was saying, all of this is still supplemental information, but the Architectural Woodwork Standards is another good reference point if you're struggling with anything related to millwork or detailing or wood veneers and how they match them. That is the Bible of all woodworking. The Interior Graphic Standards book, I have the student edition, the blue one, still sitting on my desk, and I use it at work, so it's not a bad investment if you think you're going to use it to study, and I still use it after I've passed the exam to reference anthropometric data, recommended clearances, and about office environments and anything like that. It's got good graphic, as the name would suggest, good graphics that go with everything. So the last one, Interior Design Illustrated, kind of goes along with Interior Graphic Standards. It's a Ching book, and I don't know if y'all are familiar with Francis Ching, but he draws everything. So if you're a visual learner, this is a really good book to have because everything is drawn out. It's not just a book full of words that tries to explain to you something that's visual. and the interior design in a flashcards. I bought those. They're directly from the ballast textbook, and it's like $20, I think, for the full set on Amazon. And they're great because the ballast gets a little heavy when you're trying to carry it around everywhere, and you could just keep a stack of flashcards in your purse or whatever when you're wandering around or sitting in a waiting room. They're helpful to have, and they're color-coded according to which test you're studying for.
So this is Taylor. In addition to all of those resources, there are some other things that you should be thinking about and trying to do to prepare for your exams. One is developing a support system and accountability. It's really helpful to see how others are studying, how they're organizing their information to kind of help you figure out what strategy you should use. It's also good to work out a schedule. If you know your test is coming up, work it out as if you're training for a race or something. For example, I know that some members of our team have, an hour a day allotted to doing practice exams or their flashcards. Some of us are doing every other day, 30 minutes to 2 hours. So just figure out what works best for you, but keep it going so you're not rushing at the end to learn everything. Also, find an expert if you are studying a topic that really doesn't make sense to you, because in the end, all of this information is important for your career. So it's really good to take this moment to truly understand how something works or how it might work at different firms. So just reach out to this community that is connected here if you have a question. Also, practice quizzes online through QPractice, which Sydney mentioned, are extremely helpful. I rely on these heavily because you're getting a sense of how the actual exam will work. And then lastly, some of us at CJMW have simulated test day before, where we sit down and time ourselves and have absolutely no distractions around and take practice exams out of the interior design reference manual. That was extremely helpful as well, because anything you can do to get yourself used to that type of setting is going to be really helpful.
One thing I'd like to add too on the study tips and tricks is kind of time yourself. Because I still, even though the practicum has changed a lot since the drafted version, I still feel like time management can creep up on everyone, whether it's the multiple choice exams, because, once you're doing the multiple choice, that time really goes away quickly when you're thinking about your answers, especially on professional practice exam, because a lot of the questions require you to analyze the question given and synthesize an answer from that. And a lot of the answers given to those questions are kind of open-faced, where it could be right, but it's not the most correct answer that CIDQ expects you to know. So you're having to think about that a lot, and it really eats away your time. So I still think timing yourself and getting that time management down is going to be crucial on these exams.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Garrett, because that is something that I found through doing the practice quizzes, having not walked into a multiple choice exam at a Prometric center, you don't know if you're going to be able to flag the questions or not. That is something that they do let you do. So reading a question, if you're not sure about it, I found it was really helpful to flag it and just move on and not sit there and dwell on it, because that's when I tend to overthink myself. So if you flag it, move on to the next question. At the end of the test, Prometric will let you go back and review those flagged questions that you may have been unsure about or you may have not answered because you were worried about time.
That's a great point. I would also like to add, too, don't overwhelm yourself. I would break up your exams as much as you'd want to. I kind of took them back to back, and it was incredibly stressful, just because I was going from studying, one exam to moving directly into studying for the next exam, and I found it really stressed me out more, and I was extremely exhausted after the exams just because of how different they are. So I definitely recommend breaking those out, whether it's going to be take one at the beginning of the month, one at the end of the month, and if you're going to do all three at one time, take one in the middle of the month. That way you've got time to pace yourself, relax from the last exam, think about the next exam, and kind of devise a study technique.
All right, well, that concludes our pre-planned component, but I wanted to open it up and see if anyone else had any questions for our guest speakers. Paul asked, is the ballast book still relevant for the new Practicum 2.0?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. This is Amanda again. I don't have the latest edition of the ballast book, but my guess would be no, only in the sense that no one else has taken the Practicum 2.0 yet. The first group to take it will be this fall, and so typically prep material comes out after the first group has taken it, because those are the people who help create the prep material. So the content of construction documents and codes would be the same, but the book probably wouldn't be able to tell you the format of the questions or give you tips on that sense.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Tiffany wrote, "Can we cover the forms and experiences and the like?" Not.
Are you talking about the forms that you need to submit to CIDQ to get approved to take the exam?
Yes, it looks like she's wanting what she needs to have to send to NCIDQ.
Whenever I remember submitting for mine, and so CIDQ provides all the forms you're going to need. They're work verification forms on their website that you can just download and fill out. You have to basically give an average of how long you worked after college, and there's an equation to multiply out by the 40 hours a week, and it gives you your total hours, and then your supervisor has to sign off on it. And if I remember correctly, the last time, whenever I filled out for the verification, if your supervisor was NCIDQ certified, all your hours counted 100%. If they were not NCIDQ certified, I think it only counted for a certain percentage of it, so you'd have to work over what it would take, if that makes sense. Can you vouch for that, Amanda?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yes. So it depends on whether you are working under an NCIDQ certified professional. It also depends on what your education is, meaning do you have a 4-year degree, do you have a 2-year degree, do you have a degree in architecture. So there are, I think, 6 different paths that you can take for eligibility, and that is why I would really recommend looking at the website, because it breaks it down visually, each path that you can take.
We have another question on, can you review the sequencing for taking the exams, i.e. the FX be retaken in the same fall session? If you fail to take the exam, how long do you have to wait to retake it?
So you can take all of the sections if you are eligible for all of the sections. They can be taken in the same season, meaning fall. However, you won't earn your certificate until all of them have been passed. If you have not accumulated enough hours to be eligible, For the PX or the practicum, the only exam that you could take would be the FX, the fundamentals.
Thank you. Will partial credit be given for the practicum 2.0 since it is a computer-based exam?
No, it is pass-fail.
Okay, thank you. Somebody asked, it was mentioned that we should split up the exams. What's the time window that you have to complete the exams once registration?
I believe that's 5 years, but I would double check for that latest information on the CIDQ website.
Okay. One member did state that you can work under an NCIDQ certified person as well as an AIA person. They both will help gain your hours. Are there any additional questions for our guest panelists? Let me see. Oh, are there any apps that you can download to practice the NCIDQ?
I can speak to that. This is Taylor. There are several. I found that the Q Practice website actually had better practice questions that more align with the NCIDQ exam in reality. And you have to pay for access to a lot of the apps to actually run through a lot of questions. But I did use it to some extent, and I think for some people they could be helpful. But if you go to your app store and just search for NCIDQ, you'll get about 5 to 6 options.
Wonderful. Someone asked, if you don't take your exams in the 5 years, do you start back over from scratch and have to, or do you, what happens if you don't take it within the first 5 years of applying?
This is Amanda again. I'm not 100% confident of my answer for this, but I believe you have to take the sections again. So let me just double check on that. So let me reach out to somebody from CIDQ, and I can send an email to everybody with that answer.
Okay. Do you know if an exam is failed, how long do you have to wait to retake the exam?
You can take it the next session. So if you take it in the fall and you fail it, you won't find out until right around Thanksgiving or Christmas. So then you can take it immediately again in that spring. So you can register, you can sign up for the exam in January to take it in April.
Wonderful. What percentage do you have to make, what percentage do you have to make to pass each section?
I do not know that question. I think did you know the answer, Garrett?
I think for the 2 multiple choice, I feel like passing is around 500 points. I don't know, not necessarily like a percentage. And then I'm not sure with the Prac 2.0 because with the old Prac, it was a different grading scale, I feel.
But if I don't think it goes by section, you can still, at least with the old Prac, fail a section, depending on which section it was, and pass the exam. So it's not like you have to get a certain percentage for each section. It's a cumulative percentage of the whole test rather than each section.
That's correct.
Someone asked, is there additional info you can share about the new Prac 2.0? Are there residential sections different from the commercial sections?
Yes. So there's 3 case studies. There is 2 case studies that deal with commercial applications and 1 case study that deals with a residential application. So the question may be testing similar things like code, but they may be asking the question in relation to a residential setting versus a commercial setting.
Wonderful. And this kind of circles back to our mobile app question. Is there one that you recommend? I know Q Practice Prep was discussed, but is that one the most recommended?
I don't believe that they actually have an app, Q Practice, but there were several somewhat generic NCIDQ related apps. I think between our team, we all tried about every single one, and just really, I think the consensus was that those were good if you're in a pinch and you're traveling, but we liked the format of Q Practice better, and that's just an online format where you need to pay a subscription for a month or shorter period of time to take the practice exams.
Thank you. A question came from Rose. Are all the exams split 50% commercial, 50% residential, or is one type more strongly represented?
I can only speak to the fall one, and that I know that it is 2 case studies commercial and 1 case study residential. I have no idea how many questions there are for each of those, and I don't think that they would release that. I don't know if the case studies are going to change the time that you take it. My guess is that they would be, just like every practicum has changed, and that the case studies might change. If not, the questions certainly would. So they would not be asking exactly the same thing if you took it in the fall and the spring.
Wonderful.
But the case studies are just for the new practicum, right, Amanda? They're not for the PX or the FX?
Yes, just for the practicum 2.0.
Wonderful. One of the Tiffany's question was, are there any study groups for the Carolinas schedule yet? I can speak on behalf of IIDA. We're not really planning study sessions, but what we are going to provide is the list of attendees. So to this course that maybe you can reach out to see if people in your area are studying. I think most people have kind of clustered up in groups. I know that's what I did when I studied, and with people who are around me. But I'm happy to provide the information to the people who allowed their information to get shared to anyone who would like it to kind of search for study partners. Paige wrote, do you recommend applying for all 3 sections at the same time or taking the IDFX by itself the first time of pass rate?
Whenever I applied for the exams, I did apply for all 3 sections, and I scheduled them all at the same time. Whenever I took the practicum, though, it's offered in a different month. Well, it was, not now. So I ended up taking the practicum in August, and then both sections of multiple choice in October. You can do it as long as you're diligent on studying and making sure you're not going to overwhelm yourself. I made this point before where I kind of got a little bit overwhelmed, and it was a lot having all that at one time with my work schedule, especially because I scheduled both multiple choice exams back to back, like one day after the other. And it was hard to just give me some breathing room to study for one exam, relax from that exam, and get prepared for the next exam. So I would just try to pace yourself still, and it kind of goes back to that time management aspect of the whole exam.
I've kind of heard both sides of the coin about taking the IDFX. I'm assuming like what you're asking is right out of school before you're eligible to take the other 2. One is all that information that you learned in school is still pretty fresh in your brain, and you can take it and pass it. Hopefully, maybe you don't necessarily have a crazy busy work schedule that'll allow you to study a little bit more and just focus your time on the FX and just get that one knocked out right out the gate. But then, you know, there's also if you wait until you're in a professional environment, you know, that kind of helps with the questions that are on the IDFX as well. It's mostly book learning stuff, but it's stuff that you use in practice too. And also sometimes if you get at a design firm, I know some firms will pay if you pass for your exam fees. So that is another positive, at least in my book, for waiting to take the IDFX. Because especially I know when I got out of college, I was pretty broke. So.
Thank you. Heather wrote, you mentioned the Q prep classes. Is this happening again? This is Lee Stevenson, and I help IIDA Carolinas chapter has helped provide some of these courses in the past. We've had 2. We do hire outside professors to come in and lead these courses, and it was based on the old practicum, the hand-drafted one. So the professors and the group that we work with, we're kind of working with them. We have a budgeted line item for our 2018 year, but the professors have to get the curriculum ready. Since the 2.0 has just come out, they don't have a curriculum that is geared to this new practicum. But once that's ready, we will plan on scheduling those Q prep classes, the ones that are practicum-based, again. I hope that answers your question. The Rose asked, does the tables, charts, and graphs represented in the ballast book ever come up during the test? Is it worth memorizing many of those charts, or might they be provided in the test itself?
I was trying to think if I could remember an instance where they came up. I feel like the ballast books, like the exam's not going to have it verbatim because Kent Ballast is making these books on his own time, essentially, outside of like CIDQ. But I do think it's worth looking at the charts and kind of being familiar with them, just for the aspect of he's going to base his information off of what CIDQ is going to test you on. He's also going to base off of building codes and other topics that you're going to need to know, whether it be in your professional career or just to pass the NCIDQ. So I feel like it's definitely worth looking at them and being familiar with them. I'm not sure about truly like memorizing them to where it's like burned into your brain. I don't know if that, I hope that helps answer it or not. I know it's a little open-ended, but does anyone else care to comment on that, Sydney or?
I don't know that I have any more information than you do.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our conclusion on the questions that we had listed in the conversation. But I do want to thank our speakers, Amanda Gale and Sydney Kirshen and Garrett Wilson and Taylor Ghost. And thank you for your time and preparing this information for our members. And thank you all for having your patience with me as we go through these technical difficulties. But and what I'll do is I will send a list of the attendees. So if you do want to provide study groups or maybe get together with some of your local designers who are studying, I can provide that information through an email. And I'll also provide a hyperlink to this presentation if you want to use it as reference. But we thank you for your time.
Thanks, Lee, for organizing this too. I know it was a lot of work.
Oh, no problem. Well, thank you, and I'll reach out to you all shortly.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I had to.